All right. So, first, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us. This is the final online event of the Great Middle East Platform, the Green MENA Network, organizing it. I'm Rachel Trabulsi, and I will be the moderator of this session today. I will start. The workshop today will be exploring how art and heritage can empower us to make impact in environmental protection. So this workshop is organized by the Greater Middle East Platform, a platform who wants to make green partnership central in international cooperation and trade. The Green MENA Network is an initiative by the Greater Middle East Platform. It maps sustainable actors in the Middle East and North Africa to connect, facilitate, cooperate for a green future. Our guest speaker today is our lovely Miranda Lakerveld, the founder and artistic director of World Opera Lab. World Opera Lab creates innovative operas that bridge cultural differences and reflect on contemporary issues in poetic ways. A place where myth, music, and dance from different cultures and artistic disciplines meet. World Opera Lab performs in unique locations from Azadi Tower in Tehran to Mercator Plain in Amsterdam West, from the rainforest of Indonesia to Rotterdam's Afrikaanterwijk, from the lagoon communities in Lagos to the Holland Festival. The latest productions of the World Opera Lab are Agua Sagrada, a musical ritual inspired by the sounds of water and Mayan poetry with music recovered from archival research into Mayan music, and Brides of the Rain, Ara'is al-Matar, a rain ritual for the 21st century, merging myth and music, discussing the issue of water. World Opera Lab has a repertoire of work that focuses on cultural heritage as the driving force and inspiration behind the opera productions, with the involvement of communities that are facing big challenges caused by environmental issues. That's why the Green MENA Network is collaborating with World Opera Lab to bring these issues in the MENA region to the forefront, using different ways, inspiring ways, to reach audience and advocate for green and sustainable MENA. The network believes that there are different ways of working on these issues, using cultural heritage as a form of activism. This way of connecting people around certain issues and creating a push for the green agenda in the region, having the stories of the people and the land heard.
Hi guys, I'm Miranda. So nice to meet you. I actually have prepared an introduction to the work, but we're focusing a lot on having a dialogue about the possibilities and to share the practices also maybe that you have. So I will do like a 15-minute introduction, just exploring what we have done and share some of the possibilities, and that will be a start for a dialogue. How far something like this can go. One of our projects about deforestation in Indonesia actually finally made it to Al Jazeera News, and it gives a good image of what we do and how far it can reach. So maybe we can show that. Yeah, thank you.
In the Kayan culture of Indonesia, Ini Aya is the goddess and protector of the forest. The opera, sung in both Kayan and German from Wagner's Der Ring des Nibelungen, shows the history of how the forests were destroyed in Kalimantan, on Borneo in Southeast Asia.
Both these stories are about a woman that is protecting the tree of life and a man that comes to attack the tree because he wants knowledge. And the tree starts to die, and then we have to figure out what we do. And we wanted to address, Yadi and I, the deforestation in Kalimantan and the causes of deforestation that come from the West.
One of the stars of the opera is Dominicus Uyub, who saw for himself how the trees disappeared. It's thought nearly half of the rainforest in Kalimantan has been lost in the last 30 years.
We need to remind the world that Ini Aya does not like humans to destroy our forest and take away her rights to protect it. I really want to ask the people in Europe, the people in the West, to save what is left of our world, of our forest. Help us. Help us.
Video art illustrates the destruction of the rainforest. Here, opera is being used as a universal language to convey an urgent message. Combining ancient songs with figures and dates, the audience is taken on a journey of the rainforest destruction, a musical reminder that ancient myths have warned humanity long time ago about an impending disaster. Through the ancient myth of the Tagnalawe, the Kayan tribe learned that greed and a search for power eventually will destroy nature. Composer Nosalim Yadi Anugrah studied Kayan culture and took its musical instruments to Amsterdam.
Saya pikir di dalam tanah lawe itu punya banyak nilai.
We can learn a lot from the Taknalawe. Greed and consumerism are very human. This is what we want to discuss in this performance. We should not leave this global problem in the hands of local communities to solve.
Not all is lost. In the end, the granddaughter of Ini Aya sings the broken pieces of the Tree of Life back together, and Wotan does not survive his attack, as he accepts that greed is not the way. An optimistic note at the end of a tragic epos that humans can turn the tide if we accept or guilt. Step Vassen, Al Jazeera, Amsterdam.
So this is one of our projects, and I can explain a little bit what the project was and how we get to that point, so our methodology of working and what we've been able to do with that and what we think can be the possibilities. So this work has started as an exploration of music drama or opera as a global art form. When I was small, I thought art could change the world by itself. And then when I came into contact with opera, I thought there was something very magical and transformative about opera. So I decided I wanted to be I would train as an opera director. And then quickly realized that actually the walls inside the art world are huge. So that reflection of the world I knew, which was very diverse, with many different cultures. That's where I grew up in. That didn't exist in the art world in Holland. So that was very, very strange for me, actually. So, and then I started thinking that actually all the cultures around the globe have in their origin practices that are sung and danced and that have these mythological stories. And every text that we have, I believe, every ancient text that we have used to be sung and performed. So, for example, Enuma Elish or the Popol Vuh, these ancient texts used to be performed in a sort of ritualistic. And you could say that is maybe the origin of opera. So I tend to see opera not as something European, but as a worldwide practice that is very ancient. And opera is one quite contemporary form of that. I did a lot of research, and what I found working with teachers and heritage keepers and singers, and what I found is that all these practices, when they are not codified, like in Europe, all these practices are very rooted in their own societies. They're often multicultural, which is very interesting. So usually they hold different cultures or even different spiritual ideas inside the pieces. Usually because it's like there was an ancient form and then another culture entered it, and it just kept that dialogue inside the artwork. And very often, when these cultures are marginalized or under pressure, the identity is under pressure, a lot of times these forms of music drama are an important vehicle to regain the independence or the resistance. So, for example, in Guatemala, there's a pre-Hispanic piece called Rabina Lachi. This was one of the first things that they reconstructed after the Civil War. And the Tibetan have a form of opera, which is the first thing the Dalai Lama did when they fled to India, is form an institute to safeguard that piece of opera. And it's very important for the community. It's also used it contains symbols that keep being relevant in new political situations. So this is something that I wanted to share with you something that I call metamorphic symbols, which are stories or symbols that keep being relevant, although they change meaning. And this is something very interesting that you can maybe use in activism or advocacy. I think we can all agree that the heritage is very powerful. We were just discussing in the introduction, we were just discussing this situation in the parliament in New Zealand, where this young parliament member is doing a haka to show her resistance against this new policy. And it went viral globally. And this is how you see it, you don't forget it, it's very clear. And it's so rooted, people connect to it, and also other cultures connect to it. So there's something that is similar. So it's not just that culture, it's also that other cultures connect to that issue through the connection of the heritage. What we do, another thing that I found often, the very ancient stories and the very ancient traditions are a vehicle for us to connect to the resources that we need for our sustenance. So that they relate us to the water, to the trees, to the plants. And there is a sort of system analysis. So like in Ina Aya, it shows the nature, but it also shows our human nature to be curious about that nature and to want to grab things from it. So it's all the characters in these stories kind of represents part of the problem. So they can be interesting ways to look at different aspects of a certain issue or a problem, or bring it to the contemporary time. What we do is we work a lot in the dialogue between Europe and the countries where Europe is affecting the situation. At the moment, we work still in Indonesia also, because Dutch companies are creating a mess there still. We also work in Nigeria, and we work in Iraq and in Mexico. And all these places, Dutch companies have been active or are still active. So it's a way of creating a dialogue at the place where what I call the clusterfuck is happening, which is in the international space between nations, basically. Because we cannot, as Yadi says, we cannot ask local communities to be responsible for a problem that they didn't cause. And also, we are not in the West, maybe we don't even know what we're causing. So that's a dialogue. So what we do is we usually start projects with workshops, and we invite artists and activists and heritage keepers and maybe spiritual leaders to come and think with us about what we call ancient stories for modern times. Usually we pick a topic, could be trees, could be water. For Alia, maybe we could go into trees, but I prepared water, but trees would be as easy to do. So we start comparing first the mythological stories. So for example, if you think about the topic of water, you could say like the creation myths from Mesopotamia, where Tiamat is in the water, this sweet and salt water, how her body is broken, and from that body is all the creation comes from her body. And then we start to compare, or we start to bring in, people usually still carry a lot of knowledge about their cultural heritage with them. Everybody does. So moment we start to create a space to speak about these symbols and these stories, people come up with, we have a ritual, or I have a family member that is holding on to a singing tradition that is related to or all these kind of different, so many people are involved in bringing heritage from one generation to the next, of course. The second part is that we look for songs related to, for example, the water in this case, and these can be connected and interwoven. The third part is that we look at rituals or things put into the space and symbols. For example, when we did the Brides of the Rain ritual, there is still a ritual that is a rain ritual in Kurdistan. It exists in Bulgaria. We found it in Morocco, in Zambia, I think. So we started speaking to people about this ritual, and it's similar rituals exist around the globe. And lastly, we try to reflect it on the contemporary situation, and sometimes really try to see how we can create a new narrative around the necessity to protect nature. So sometimes the voice of the characters, the goddesses, for example, is like really we let her really look at the situation. So this could be the numbers, the data of the dying trees, the news, the prospects of there not being any water in 2040 in the Euphrates region. So we try to see how we can come to a point where it's really reflecting on the contemporary situation. I think a few things that are important to point out, if we're, for example, speaking about water bodies, this multicultural aspect of the work is very important, because a water body usually have many cultures that have to take care of that water body. So if any action has to involving communities, involving different cultures maybe, so this is one aspect. Maybe that dialogue can also cross divides from different political points of view, because cultural heritage is also something that people that are on the right side of the political spectrum also really feel attached to. The guy that was in the 6th of January, the shaman, he had a Yggdrasil, so the sacred tree, on his chest. So these people also attach to these symbols. So maybe you can use that attachment. And let me see, what can I? So yeah, we are really exploring like how can we use these powerful symbols and these powerful stories to really address issues globally, and how can it be a tool, for example, in activism, in advocacy? So this is really research. It's not something that is fixed. It's we try, we see what works, what doesn't work, and to get really the strengths of this cultural heritage and use it to benefit the nature and the natural resources.